right.
All right.
One day I'm going to record you dancing just before the show.
I know that I do not lie. I actually am dancing with Dash for most of the time before the show actually starts up. So it's a way to get my blood pumping. It's kind of a way to kind of start being ready to engage people the moment the camera comes up. So here I am.
Gets the show going.
Hi, Simon.
Right. Yes. Hello. We're going to go straight into this. We'll do some introductions and we'll have some chat, and then hopefully we'll be joined by some Googlers, which should be joining us just partially into the show.
Yep.
They're heading into the office now, so we'll see them soon, hopefully. Right. Let's start the thing off. Okay. I guess Randall, this is your job now.
That's true, since I'm virtual Scott today. So again, we have just a few rules, just a few simple rules. Be nice, be respectful, be constructive. Don't everybody here is trying to learn stuff, so try to respect all that. Don't post anything if it's adult or rude or offensive. Do not advertise or promote anything. If you are on camera, you're allowed to promote whatever you want, but not all of you are on camera. None of you are on camera, as far as I can tell. Well, maybe you're on your own cameras. I don't know, but not here. So don't spam. Don't post the same thing again and again. We do have ban hammers that will get rid of your repetitive posts. Also, in particular, if you post a question and then you post that same question 20 or 30 minutes later, you've just lost your place in line by 30 minutes. So don't do that. That's just silly. We see it. We see all the questions that are properly marked, which is, in fact, by putting Q: in front of the question, then I will notice it and put it into our queue. We also do not tolerate any kind of harassment. Again, we have ban hammers here. You will be summarily ejected. So be off and do that. And then there's 0.6. I think it's have fun, but it's behind there. It is. Yes. Oh, do have a good time. You are hiding the most important point of all 6. There is have a good time, because we're having.
I will mention also, we do forget to mention this, but if you post a link, we won't see your message at all. It just gets filtered out. So if you want to post some code for us to talk about or look at or discuss, post a gist a gist hash. I'll get it out in a second. So if it's gists.github.com, gist.github.com, and then you can post like a little sample, whatever your code is, and then send the hash. That's the URL from the URL, and pop that in the chat, and we can go look it up and find that code. That's
we have to
share some code.
We have to keep saying that every week now, so that should probably be added to the list of do's and don'ts.
We should probably do that, we should
URLs are not permitted. URLs are not permitted in the chat. But if you want to post something to us, get a gist and take the hash out of it. Yeah, that could be like a number 7 bullet.
And especially for those people that are new here, we should just introductions. So my name is Simon Lightfoot, Flutter community leader and CTO at Dev Angels London. I also do talking, speaking, conferences. We are upcoming FlutterCon, a bunch of other stuff. So you'll find us around somewhere, I'm sure. Scott can't be here today. He's got family emergency, but we have a Randall. Randall, please introduce yourself.
Randall Schwartz. I've been a Dart and Flutter Google developer expert since the very beginning of the program 5.5 years ago. And I also am a full-time Flutter hacker. I write code every day. In fact, even just before this show, I was writing code for my client. So pretty cool stuff. And I've also, for this show, we call it the question magician, which means I am the one responsible for watching the chat, watching for you to put Q: in front of your questions, and I will flag all of those. And today, since I'm also virtual Scott, I'll also be reading those to our panel. And that's how you get questions on the panel. If you don't put Q: in front of it, we presume it's people chatting amongst themselves, because that happens a lot in the chat rooms as well. So, but if you put Q: we'll notice it and put it in our queue. Oh, the horrible pun every week.
We also have another guest in the eaves. Let's welcome Roman to the stage. Hey, Roman.
Yeah.
Hey, what's up, guys? How's everybody doing?
Happy to be here.
Yeah, introduce yourself.
Yes. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Roman. I am a Flutter GDE. I am also a lead organizer at GDG Lawrence. Again, I'm always happy to come up and share with you guys and spend some time. I'm standing in for Scott, but never, fill in his shoes. So
So we've been chatting over the past few weeks, briefly on the show, and I know Scott, I couldn't make it, but Scott did a little bit around AI. I mean, have you tried AI? Any of the AI stuff, Roman?
I've already tried a couple of applications using like the Google Generative AI package with some of my Flutter applications, both in native and web. And in a couple of weeks, I'll actually be a shameless plug. I'll be doing a build with AI session with the folks at GDG Surrey in Canada. And just yesterday, the Google team announced that the Gemini API will be available in Canada. My whole workshop was set up around developing a web application, tapping into Gemini API via a proxy cloud function. That was the only way to make it work. But now I'm just reverting it back to normal Flutter using the Google Gemini API. So it's pretty cool. There's a yeah, go ahead.
You know what? It might be just out of curiosity. It might be worth having that bit that you've done around the proxy thing. Maybe putting it to one side and having like a link to some information around it.
I will actually be doing that. Yes, in the code lab that I created, I'll actually have both. Like, okay, you want to do it via regular RESTful HTTP endpoint and tap into Gemini, or you want to do it straight up from Flutter. So I'll actually do both. That's a good idea. Thank you, Simon.
Cool.
You're the one doing it. It wasn't me. You're welcome. I'm trying to find the details about which countries are now allowed.
It was a little weird that like Canada. I mean, come on, they're like our one of our nearest neighbors, and I'm like, why isn't that allowed? But it was funny.
It's all about.
It was a good experience. Yeah.
It's all about the lawyers. Lawyers got to sign off on it because somehow you have to be able to be within the dotted I's and crossed T's of the particular countries and regions that it's in. So I understand that. It's interesting.
Now, as a GDE, I'm assuming, Randall, you've also been given access to the Gemini API files API, and also I'm also exploring with the video API. You can just like send a video, and you can actually say, okay, what's in this video? Can you interpret it? And a lot of cool things. So stay tuned. I'm actually going to be sharing some of that stuff with Flutter as well.
Yeah, just a couple days ago, I got access to both the 1.5 and Ultra through the API, and then I've been playing with that a lot the last couple days. So, yeah, regions. There we go. So go there.
Yeah, I found the list of regions. Canada is now listed on the set of regions. So that's great. Sadly, United Kingdom is not there yet.
do the proxy cloud function.
Yeah, there you go.
Woe betide me. I need to do some Shakespeare. Maybe they'll turn up. Right.
Yeah, you can get around it right now legally by renting a cloud machine that's in a proper region, and making your calls to that cloud machine, which is what you were doing, right, Roman?
Is that
you can rent a machine anywhere you want in the world, right?
No, but what I'm trying to say is it's more about then you take the liability of what's entered into whatever the software is, right? Because they're saying like they're going to use I think it's all about privacy, right?
Yeah.
Yes, about them using the data, right? So you become liable essentially for the data being entered into the thing, right? So for dev purposes, that's fine. If you're willing to do that, I guess that's fine. But I totally get it.
And it's also not free. I mean, you're renting a machine.
Yeah, exactly. It's not free.
You're paying
you got associated with a billing account. Correct.
Yep. Yeah, they get your money. I think I got hit with 1 penny last quarter here, or last month. And I think it was only an accidental experiment that I accidentally did on Vertex without realizing I was doing it on a paid account. So exciting stuff. I have been playing with it a lot, though, since this is a show about Gemini. We're still waiting for the people to show up about that. I'm finding fascinatingly being able to get shaped responses by telling it how I want it to respond. I say, please respond with everything after this with the original question here, and the answer colon, answer here. And I just say that as English
Yeah, that's
and
what
then
they
it
call it.
repeats question. Okay, that's the question. Answer, and it's like, wow, it just immediately adopts to however I've described it.
Yeah, that's you adding the context tokens, right? You're giving it context.
Yeah, you give it like either zero shot prompting, few shot prompting, or like one shot prompting, and that's exactly how I've also been doing it. And another thing that I've been using Gemini is also as my backend. Let me explain. So I also do the same thing. I do variable interpolation in my prompt, and at the end I always say, please generate it as a JSON with these properties. So then I get it as a JSON, well formatted, and then I just consume it. I parse the JSON, consume it in my application, and I'm like, I have a backend right there. And then I didn't have to do any databases. I didn't have to do all of those things.
Yeah. I saw what did I see recently? It was a kind of interesting idea around this, right? You provide the context, and you give it context about understanding how to construct SQL statements, right?
Yeah.
And then you can say, here, given this create table, given this schema, make some queries based on this input. And it will actually say, it'll work out what the queries are and generate the queries. I wouldn't recommend this from an asset because someone could trick it into doing anything, right?
Of course.
But given a certain structure and saying, okay, replace these variables maybe with this thing, you could actually limit its scope. But equally, there's an interesting flexibility there where you could have it help you generate that kind of the complex statements you might need, right?
And we're certainly in an interesting era. We're in an interesting era now where we've gone from just traditional programming.
Yeah, it's just like, you're trying to take me out of work, no SQL.
Yeah. So Steph's a database administrator as well. Yeah.
We've gone from low level, machine level programming to high level languages to more advanced frameworks and systems to machine learning, where it would be, trying to work out patterns of things by doing, the normal sort of learned data sets, to now to the point where we get generative code. And it's interesting if you watch this progression, and I've been around long enough to see pretty much every step of that, but it's been fascinating watching this and then seeing, we're not quite where the Star Trek computer is, but we're awfully close. And data, accessing, that kind of stuff. It's starting to become more and more real. And who knew we would get there just by using really long Markov chains? Because that's ultimately all this stuff is. So,
and along the same lines, what Simon mentioned, you could also do you could have the Gemini call your own functions and even feed it parameters. So talk about now completely automated backend where you just say, do this, call my function, feed it the the values that it requires, and just go off on it. So it's pretty cool.
Pretty amazing stuff. We have a few questions already. If you want to, sorry, go ahead.
Well, let's. I was going to say, I really want to give this whole thing a go, but I've not had the time, and it's like when it's not instant grab API and do it. I'm like, I like the idea of setting up this proxy. If it's just like check out a repo, run the example, and it will spin up in your GCP or whatever. And
correct,
I'll give that a go because I really want to, give this stuff a go. See how it settles out.
I could put Roman on the spot and say, can you do some live coding streaming to show us?
I could actually show you what I did for what I'm actually doing for the GDG. Why don't I just share the gist? Can I share the gist and you can take a look at it?
You can share the screen.
Okay, I'll share my screen. I'll share my screen, and then
also if you put gist in, we can share it with the audience and
perfect. But you know what? Let's not share the gist just yet because I want to keep that as a surprise for the
I figure
exactly. So let me show you how I did it using the proxy cloud function. So I'm going to show you just now. Let me share my screen. I hope I don't have to be like I think that's it. Okay, let me know if you guys can see it.
Yeah.
So that is my cloud, my just Google Cloud, right? And then the way that I did it, if you go to Cloud Functions, so I have my Gemini endpoint. Remember that you need to have
can
a
you
Gemini
zoom in
API.
a little?
Oh yeah, of course. How about there?
Yeah, perfect.
So yeah, so you need to have your API key, of course, and of course, I trust even the people who are watching, which is okay. If you the way that you save and you should store instead of hard coding it in the code, the way that you do it is either, for example, like you can set it up as a runtime environment variable, and then the source code is very straightforward. I'm actually using Node.js's Gemini's AP SDK, which is pretty
Right.
cool. You could also do any other language, but that is supported. But if you see, for example, all I'm doing is just invoking getting a reference to the model, which is a Gemini Pro, and like Randall just mentioned, we can use the 1.5. If you do have access to one of those
model. So the model is well, hang on, Pro is 1.5.
Yes, Pro is 1.5. Yes, here is just like you could just say, whichever model you're trying to tap. You could do the Vision, also Gemini Vision. And look at this, just what I mentioned. You just have the prompt, and then I say generate a JSON payload that returns such and such. I do variable interpolation within the prompt. You just send it to the model to generate the content, and then the response. All I do is, because I always get it as a JSON. It has like a bunch of words. I just clean it up. I parse it and just send it back down. And this is what it looks like. For example, if I just click on this one, I should be able to get something back. If not, I think, see, it just sends something. It returns you like a JSON. I should do it, for example, like maybe based on Postman. Let me just do it like a post, because I made it into a post. So let me show you right now. Here we go. And then, for example, like if I just say, send me, I'm going to send it to that same endpoint, for example. Let me just copy the endpoint. And then sorry.
Can you make that bigger?
Exactly. I think I can make this bigger as well. And then let's say the JSON would be something like this. Like I want to convert, the conversion is, Celsius to Fahrenheit, for example. And then I say the input value, the input, what am I calling it? Because I have to call it something. So I have to, the temperature. That's it. So I just say, just give me I send you the conversion. I'll give you the temperature, and then you respond to me appropriately. For example, so that way you could do all that, locally or on a cloud function. But I just wanted to, for example, like try to do it with this. If I say, okay, so convert from Celsius to Fahrenheit, 32 Celsius, for example. And then if I just do send on the post, I should be able to get back, and there it is. So you see, you get Fahrenheit, Celsius, output 0. If I just say, for example, like let's do the opposite. Let's do Fahrenheit to Celsius. You could do this, multiple ways, but this was just me like playing around. If I do, 90 degrees Fahrenheit to Celsius, so it should return right back, and there it is. So this is just Gemini doing the calculation on my behalf, preparing a JSON, sending it back down, and all I do is I use this endpoint in my Flutter application, and I'm good to go. But I prepare this for Canada when Gemini API was not available, for them. But you could do this again with many other things, create your own prompts, do like really crazy stuff, and then just consume it. And the cool thing is that now you can make any application consume Gemini in a very, standard, HTTP request response type of way.
Oh.
So I wonder if when you've got prompt here, right, you could actually have prompt be input from this cloud function.
Correct.
Output, and then you'll basically just be a proxy, right?
Correct. And this a proxy. That's total. That's all that it is. I just wanted to keep it all in there, but you could have even sent the prompt yourself. I was just trying to contain it within this and make it look like this is just a regular service that you have behind this endpoint, as opposed to like, this is Gemini. No, you could just send whatever you need, and then the cloud function takes care of everything.
I'm looking at this, and I would probably, if I was me, I'd probably be more restrictive on the way that you ask it for, like so if you scroll right to the right,
Yeah, if I scroll, let me see if I can have more room in here. Here we go. Yeah, you could be as restrictive as you can, and you should, of course.
Because the thing is, I can see this going, and like they update the model or something, and suddenly you're getting different fields, or you get a different return value.
Of course.
So you really have to like nail it down and say, I want it like this. It's one of the things you said about
this, precisely correct.
It's what you said about cleaning up the output. You should be able to tell it to return just a JSON object without any, like you should be able to state that, and it should just do it, right?
I thought I told it, but for some reason it kept sending the word JSON in front with the three little the tildes, and I'm like, why is it doing this?
Well, maybe just say as well. Maybe try this. Like you could say like,
let's go to Gemini, and then I'll do the same.
Yeah.
I'll copy the same prompt.
We could introduce our guest, Simon.
If we have it, I mean.
Sorry. I'm getting carried away.
Are we still good, or can I can just?
I'll let you fiddle around with that off screen. Let's do some introductions.
Got it. Cool.
Don't worry.
Sure.
We're waiting patiently in the wings.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Hey guys, how are you?
Hello.
Hey,
how are you all?
Hey. Hello, guys.
We were enjoying just watching the show. Honestly, you could have just hung out.
We enjoy doing the show, so it's sort of even, I guess. All good.
Your names are the other way around. So Andrew is on the left, Cullen is on the right.
By design, it's a little puzzle we built in.
You need to put that through Gemini AI to get the result, right?
That's actually a setup for the project that we might get into later.
I'm happy to be PM for the day.
Easy job, right? Easy job. Anyone could do that. Yeah.
So we should introduce them, or they should introduce
themselves. Yes, please,
somehow.
Please. Yeah. Introduce yourselves, please.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, my name is Con. I'm a developer relations engineer on the Flutter team at Google, and I get to work with Ander on a lot of Flutter stuff, and in this case, Gemini and AI with Flutter and Dart.
Great. And I'm Ander. I'm a product manager on the Flutter team, and I work on broadly developer experience and tooling, as well as our package ecosystem. And as part of that, the intersection with how we make the Gemini API and tooling more broadly available to our Flutter and Dart community. And I get to work with Khan, which is amazing.
Oh.
So if anyone has any bugs, they should direct them straight to you, is what you're saying, right?
I reserve all comment. No, I'm kidding.
So I know that there was we've I'm going to see if I can dig up a link here, but there's the Flutter. I'm going to find it now. It's Google Generative AI package.
Yes.
That's broadly the package that people can be using as long as they're in the countries that are allowed to use Gemini, right?
Correct. Yes. And, maybe to unpack it a little bit. So yes, that is the package for Dart. It's a Dart package. And then by extension, Flutter. And that's by design. We wanted to make it as broadly usable as possible. And this use case lent itself to that. So what this gives you access to is the Gemini API, which more broadly has supports a host of languages. And I think you've mentioned at some point before, rightfully so, there's a broad REST API, etc. But we wanted to provide a native package for this, so that as this evolves, which it will, you can develop entirely in Dart. The second thing is this goes hand in hand, I would say, with the Google AI Studio. These are two tools I can use, and I'd say a lot of the workflow, the Google AI Studio helps you with that initial setup, experimentation, and even entirely designing whatever your use case is before you then jump into the code, if you will. So those two go hand in hand.
Interesting.
I've had a lot of fun working with the AI Studio to just try things out and experiment, and then grab. There wasn't Dart code there for a while, but at least I could get JavaScript code that I could take somewhere. I've never learned Python, so all the stuff that's all about Python now. It's like I learned Perl. And I'm not going to learn Python too. It just takes up too many neurons. But JavaScript I do know, so I've had fun playing with that.
I will say coming soon. That I can say. Dart, that copy code out of Google AI Studio is as somebody who works on the developer experience, we are working on that.
It is nice that it's listed as one of the languages, I think, on the Vertex page, where it says here's the possible languages you can work with, and so you can get Dart examples directly from the what used to be called Maker Suite. I forget what it's called now.
AI Studio, right?
AI Studio, right?
The AI Studio. Yes, it is. It is one of the languages. Hence, why we have the package. But the specific function you're talking about is once you've designed your prompts, etc. That last step of copy the code in your language where Dart isn't present, and there's a host of other languages. We will have Dart coming up there as well.
Cool.
Wonderful.
I haven't actually tried out AI Studio yet at all. I don't even know if it's
You get
available.
that in the UK? I don't think you can
I
get
have no
it.
idea. I have no idea, but I just found a lovely screenshot I can share.
You're completely blocked, Simon. You're completely in the dark, man.
American superiority, man. American superiority.
Yeah. And Con, I'm thinking it's worth also maybe calling out the difference between Vertex versus what we call Google AI.
For sure.
I think that's an important distinction that we should talk about as well. You want to give it a shot?
Yeah. So on our side, so there's two ways that you can sort of access Gemini right now. You have that Google AI Studio, like Google Lab side of things, and then you also have the Google Cloud Vertex AI suite of products as well. And personally, even for me as a Googler, I feel like I was also asking Ander for a little while. I was like, hey, can you explain the difference here? And so the way that I sort of understand it is that Google AI Studio is great for sort of hobbyist and building things out and building things super fast and playing with things. And then once you get to a point where you want to productionize things, you can move over to Google Cloud, right? And use the Vertex AI suite. And the Vertex AI suite has that similar API endpoint, but it also has a bunch of other products as well that you can essentially use to build out a pipeline or things like that. Everything that comes with, the support that comes with being a Google Cloud product. And so generally what I'm looking at is cool, like I built out this thing with the Google AI API, moving it over to Vertex is essentially a lift and shift because you can use the same sort of prompting and you use the same sort of similar endpoints over with Vertex.
Right. So, it's basically, think of it as Google AI is non-cloud. And then if you're already in the cloud world or have a use case that lends itself to all the other surrounding cloud tooling, you can use Vertex. I will say there isn't yet a Dart package on the Vertex side. There's all the other APIs, but that's just want to make the distinction between what those two things are. Now, that's not to say there's really limitations on Google AI. You can get pretty far. So yes, you can experiment in AI Studio. You can implement. There is a paid tier as you scale, right? So it's not a must that you go to cloud, but we're just providing a suite of products that's suitable for all scales and types of users.
And there's, correct me if I'm wrong, but there are third-party packages like LangChain that deal with Dart and Flutter and could also already talk to Gemini. So it's not like we have to wait for Google to provide an SDK to use Vertex. There's already third parties that have that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know enough or can't speak on that part, but yes, there are a suite of other, let's say, ecosystem products that in different ways expose different models, different providers models and APIs, etc. I don't know the specifics of LangChain, so I can't speak to that.
Now I've got a tough question for you. Can you explain the relationship between the Gemini API models and this website that's now called gemini.google.com?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Thanks for that question.
Known as BARD.
I think it's an important distinction, yes. So the website formerly known as BARD, which is Gemini now, is a product in and of itself, right? So that is it is a separate product from what I call the Gemini API, right? So if you're working with Google AI Studio, which means you're teeing up prompts and you're of different kinds, whether that be there's 3 forms right now: free form, structured, chat. So you're really forming your own use case. It's right, and then it's using the API to give you access to the underlying large language model that you can shape to your use case, if you will. Whereas Gemini, formerly known as Bard, is just a general sort of product and interface for anybody to go in and ask anything. So it's already, think of it as you could actually build Gemini you could build a Flutter version of Gemini, if you know what I mean. So they are separate products. Does that clarify a little bit, Randall?
Yeah, it's just when the name change happened, I would just went, oh no, this is just going to be so confusing to explain to people now. I mean, because Gemini uses some model of Gemini in the back end, but a lot of other things too. Like it uses the thing that makes paintings and also can do some limited queries on its own directly in the internet. So that's stuff that's not in the core Gemini models. You have to bring those as extra pieces, extra bolt-ons, if you want to get something the same as the site formerly known as Bard.
Correct. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, in my head, I had the same problem, Randall. I was like, wait, hold on. I think we were actually in a call, and I was like, Gemini, and then someone was like, wait, which Gemini? Like formerly Bard, or is it like the Gemini, like that you're like writing the API calls, right? And I mean, I think that was just a great explanation of the difference. In my head, I sort of think of Gemini, formerly Bard, as like a consumer tool for folks to be able to just readily access, and they don't need to know how to make API calls and write code or anything like that, right? And then Gemini, the API calls, like that's for a tool that developers can use within their own applications as well.
Yeah.
And then there's the Gemini website that has an advanced mode, which is calling Gemini Ultra behind the scenes, as opposed to the Gemini non-advanced mode on the website, which is only calling Pro, as far as
correct.
It's easy. Anyone knows this stuff. It's easy.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say, Randall. The commonality and why Gemini is a common name here is so all of these products are underpinned by a family of Gemini models. So there are foundational models underlying that. Ultra you mentioned. If you go in AI Studio, you've got Pro, you've got Pro Vision currently, and then you've got version 1. So there's this family of models underpinning all these products, which is called Gemini, and that's why there's that common name.
Is this completely replaced the DeepMind project, or is that still a separate activity?
So DeepMind is the research arm, or sort of the team that's working down at the foundational model. They're basically responsible for what ultimately becomes the Gemini family of models as well, right? So they're still part of the stack, if you will.
Okay, cool. So we're not going to get a DeepMind website in the future just to really confuse things, maybe.
Who knows?
Yes. Website naming. How do we do that? Do we have any? Do we have any questions that are specifically about Gemini and stuff? I think we might have something, right?
Feel free to.
I'm looking. I'm scanning quickly, and in fact, people, if you want to ask our guests these questions about Gemini and Flutter in general, this is a great time to start asking stuff.
Yeah.
I don't see anything in particular it's about Gemini. We can just start taking questions and seeing how far we get, and obviously our guests can answer some of those too.
I was actually just looking through kind of interesting. We're just talking about the models there just for a second before we jump into something else. And there's actually a whole web page called the Model Garden here, where you can explore AI models. This is around Vertex AI, right? You can do AI on Vertex. But yeah, there you go. So you can specify, V1 Pro, Pro Vision, Palm, lots and lots of various different models that obviously have specific needs and specific inputs and outputs and so on, but can help in various different ways. So
that's one of the things I noticed about Vertex is it's also letting you run models that are not Google produced. So it's really sort of a unified interface to running all of these models. Cool stuff. But for a price, not for free.
So yeah. So as you were saying, Vertex AI is the GCP connection, should we say, to using the AI stuff like Gemini.
Correct. Yeah. So if you looked at, if you're working in the Google Cloud Console, and there's a suite of products in there that you would, put together for your use case, this becomes another part of your tool set, right? Along with all the other surrounding infrastructure like admin and access control, those sorts of things wrapped up in the whole Google in the Google Cloud ecosystem.
Yeah. So that basically helps you integrate with other GCP based products.
Correct. Yeah. So
Sorry.
So, similar to coming back to the example Randall mentioned earlier, if you are building your version of Gemini, you need all sorts of infrastructure around that, right? You need to host that, you need storage, you need to serve that. So that would give you the Google Cloud sort of suite of products will give you all the tools you need.
Mm-hmm. I can add on to that a little bit as well. So we have I/O coming up, and I think I'm working on a project somewhere in the territory, semi-related. And one of the really cool things.
Sorry.
I just realized it's like, wait, I don't think it's been announced yet. But so basically, Google Cloud offers like a suite of products that you can sort of essentially chain together, right? And so, for example, Google Cloud Storage has like essentially triggers where, like, if you drop a new file into a cloud storage bucket, it can hook into a cloud function and immediately process that, like things like that, or where it becomes really useful because these products were designed to work together and be able to chain it together. And so imagine hooking up Vertex AI somewhere in the middle there. So like say whenever there's a new file that's been dropped into the bucket, tell Vertex AI to do something with it. Ask Gemini something about it, and then you can process it that way as well.
Cool. I'm actually gonna. I see the discovery documentation on the REST API, and we have as you may know, this person called Kevin Moore. He put together. Who's that? He put together the Google APIs package, right? And I think it generates documentation based off the discovery documents, so it shouldn't be too difficult to actually add the Vertex AI stuff to that and actually have Dart accessing Vertex. So interesting. Coming soon, TM.
There we go.
There's actually two Kevin Moore community. I've met both of them.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Actually, there's a few more as well, I think.
Yeah.
Really?
There is a Kevin Moore that shows up frequently on this show, and I always get confused when I look at that going, is that Kevin Moore? No, it's not Kevin Moore. I know better. Yeah, we do have a couple questions here about Gemini. So let's actually, I think this is more of a poke, but I'll let Craig ask that one there. Before the next inevitable rename, do you think we could convince the marketing team to ask Gemini whether yet another rename is a good idea?
Craig, I think we'll leave that to you.
That sounds very much like a Craig project, actually.
Here's the next thing: you ask Gemini to give its own name for the next, like to decide its own name for the next.
Right.
Yeah. Let's just
be like
say,
naming your child. That would be very appropriate.
let's just say this interesting thing about this world is sort of inception type use cases are not out of the question, and I would actually say surprisingly more common than you think. And this is not specifically, this is just from my own personal observation of just what's happening in the ML space, and just generally, right? People are asking it about anything and everything, even if it comes back to full circle to about you working on AI. So I've seen that. I do that myself personally. As I'm learning about this, I'm asking different AIs to help me understand things about itself.
Yeah, there's a practical problem that solves, and that is prompt re-engineering, where you can give it kind of an okay prompt and say, how should this better be asked? And so, and amazingly, it comes up with stuff that then we use that. It's so much better. It just somehow it has enough meta reflection buried in it somehow.
There's
Correct.
an interesting similarity between this and programming in general, like programming language in general, because you build the next language in the previous version of the language, right? So there's like this very iterative kind of loop there that takes place. Like,
yeah. Related to that, there's actually what I know is one formal, more emergent formal form of that is what's being called the agent model, right? So you have specialized agents and given tasks that interact with each other rather than one model that does everything, right? And you could have all sorts of permutations there. Maybe one model purely orchestrates and calls the shots, and other specifically tuned models do very specific tasks, and then you put that all together. That's some form of what you talked about, Randall. It could be a model just generating prompts and another one vetting the prompts and testing them.
Yeah, I understand 1.5 already does that. There's actually multiple sub-agents inside 1.5, and they somehow discuss amongst themselves who should really be answering this question. So that's part of why 1.5 is pretty amazing at stuff.
I'm just imagining a little gun back, me.
Yeah. It's like that. I've heard stories of people modeling an entire software development team, including QA and UX experts, and having that.
It won't work. It'll get to loops and discussions forever, and it won't work.
It's like
I mean, is that new? That sounds very familiar.
Well, we're gonna have to slip this to Sprint 47. I just freak out a whole bunch of people who've heard that kind of stuff too often.
There you go. Oh, if you had a child, what would you name it? There you go. Lexia, Indigo, Nova, Sage.
Nice.
I think it's really interesting that y'all mentioned naming a child. I know, like I saw on Twitter, someone in the community built an app that's an AI, like baby, like Tinder for baby names, but using AI. So that was like super cool. And I have it. It's like the first app that I've installed on my phone in like a little while. I think my brightness is too high, but you can swipe through baby names, and it's super cool because you can give, like preferences, like, oh, do you want a longer name or a short name, and is it a boy or a girl, and then you can sort of swipe through it. It was super cool. It was one of those apps I was just like, wait, that's so cool, and it's like such a fun experience to just to play with it.
I suppose you could even give it like the things that you like or you're interested in, to like give it hints on names.
Yeah, I was really impressed because it even asked for what language, right? I speak Vietnamese as well, so it's like, oh, it's cool that I can consider even Vietnamese as an option in there too.
Cool.
Not a phrase I expected to hear today. Yeah.
Do we have any Gemini related questions?
Yeah, there's one more. It's about iOS. Here. Why isn't a Gemini phone app available on iOS using Flutter? Well, maybe eventually. I guess you can't do it right now because you have to have a shared key, and we can't do that because that would be publishing your key everywhere.
Oh, I think so this is talking about Gemini, the
formerly Bard.
That's what this is.
Yeah.
So it is.
Maybe.
It's part of the Google app. It's not the difference with iOS is rather than it be a standalone Gemini app as on Android, Gemini in the same form, same function is just in the Google app. So get the Google app if you already have it. But then there's a toggle at the top, and you can toggle it to Gemini, and that's basically the same app.
Yeah.
But I have a segue to that question, and sorry to step in. I know that there's a bunch of other questions, but what's the state, and I hope I'm not like putting you on the spot, but for Gemini Nano, a way to run Gemini on device, what's the state of that? Because I would love to start experiment. I've done a lot of TensorFlow Lite using the TF Lite package, and then like doing on device ML training and running predictions locally. What's the state of Gemini Nano, if you can share something around that?
Yeah, so the public state of Gemini Nano, certainly share what's public, is it's currently part of a family of Google the Pixel devices, right? And it's available on there and driving some of the features underlying in those devices. And it started with the Pixel Pro. I think there's been recent news in the last couple of days about potentially just the Pixel, the non-Pro, and then it's in a suite of Samsung devices. That's a status of Nano specifically today. However, on the theme of on-device or smaller models, there is the Gemma family of models, potentially, and I think that lends itself more, in fact, is out there and available to experiment with. So, Roman, I'd be interested to know if that's if Gemma might, for your kind of experimentation, would be suitable for that.
That'd be great. Yeah, definitely. I'll be looking into that. Thank you so much.
Sure.
I think that I saw Gemma actually running as a WASM on just in a web browser. I thought that was pretty cool.
And speaking of WASM, Kevin Moore just showed up. Kevin, hello. He's in the chat. Yeah.
Yep. That Kevin Moore.
Yes.
As opposed to the other Kevin Moore.
we spoke his name 3 times and he arrived.
Yes. Wonderful.
So
I see rap was Khan is rocking an iPhone as a Googler. So as a Googler, I have both. As a Flutter DRE, I use Flutter. I use Flutter, obviously, so I have to have an Android phone and an iPhone. I have a Pixel for a work phone, and then I have an iPhone for personal phone.
correct answer.
That's the best of both worlds.
As a PM, I have every tablet as well. I need to carry them at all times as a Flutter PM.
Your backpack must be really heavy.
So
Yeah.
I think it was before your time, but during which Flutter event was it that had the Okta desktop thing, which had like every device. I'm just imagining Ander like wheeling this thing around behind him all the time.
The octopus. They
Every
call it like the
device available.
octopus.
Yeah, he was like, yeah.
That's why Ender's so fit. Like he's just like wheeling around like all these machines all day.
Yeah, that's the secret's out, folks. So yeah, that's
He's probably hoping that the swag for writing conference is another backpack. I have 5
Yes, it was Chris
backpacks on
Close,
now.
yes.
Wonderful. Oh, we have some more questions, and people are still asking things, and some of them are just general Flutter questions. So if you want to jump in and answer some of these as well. Let's see here. What's a good one for all of you here? I can answer this one. With a video that I've done. This is something that's not clear to many people, is that the pub has a lot of Google produced packages. And so there's a healthy ecosystem, and I would like to call those first party packages. I did a 1-minute short on this, but maybe you could elaborate on that a bit and explain why there are things in the pub that are from Google.
On pub, from Google.
So you have like labs.dart.dev, you've got dart.dev, all the publishers we mean, like the
All right. Okay.
yeah, and there's google.dev as well.
Yes. So I think broadly speaking, we've got within the ecosystem, right, we try and as much as possible, there's kind of the core Dart and Flutter stack, if you will, but as much as possible and practical, we put in the ecosystem, including what the Google team itself produces. That's the reason why a lot of these things, if it can be a package, it should be a package, rather than be hard coupled to, say, the core framework or the core language, etc. So that's the spirit under why there are several Google publishers and these packages out there, because and that's supposed to be across the whole community, right? So that's the broad answer there.
And I will just post and bring up. Hang on, let's see if I can find it. This is the official list of Dart team packages.
Right.
So Dart.dev, tools.dart.dev, labs.dart.dev. I don't know if there's a Flutter page that's similar to this. I know this one existed though. So
yeah, that's a good question. I don't know that there's a Flutter one specifically, but there's a similar list of Flutter publishers that will have that own packages on the ecosystem.
Although if we don't already have one, that would be a great page to have.
That could be a great page to have. Might be on a widget one.
I just linked to my 1-minute short that actually lists about 9 of the domains that I was able to find. by looking for things. I look for anything that ended with Dart Dev and Flutter Dev and all that sort of stuff. So, including the Firebase one. There's a Firebase publisher. I think it's a few of those. So yeah, just short on that.
But it does actually make sense to actually have maybe a page on pub.dev that lists them out, right? I think that's like so people can find first-party packages easier.
Right.
It's a good takeaway. We'll definitely take that away. That's a good idea.
Okay. Oh, so here's an AI question. Is when are we going to be able to upload the entire Flutter docs PDF into probably some preloaded Gemini query engine?
So this actually came up last week. The question was, can we take the entire API documentation from Flutter and use it as context to Gemini? We could just ask Flutter related questions, right? I feel like that's a really interesting use case, maybe for the Flutter website or Flutter docs to actually have, how do I do this in a box? And then to direct you to the right place inside the documentation or where you should be looking, right? Like that's like, feels like a really good use case for Gemini that could be owned maybe by Google or Flutter, right?
Yeah. I'd be using that.
I will say, so with the Gemini 1.5 model, that opens up the really large context window, the 1 million token context window. And again, this is emerging and new, and that's these sorts of use cases you're talking about exactly what lend themselves to that sort of thing, right? So take it beyond, even in my mind, take it even beyond a PDF. It's media in general, right? It's photos, potentially at some future point, video, etc. So I would encourage you to go into Google AI Studio, see if it's under preview today, and we want to see you all experiment with that sort of thing and see what comes off it. It's possible.
There is to be said. There is, I mean, you could ask Gemini to interpret Markdown, and the Flutter website itself is there. It's open source, so all the documentation that's on the Flutter website that's Markdown. You could generate a context out of that and throw that in and see what it comes out with.
Yeah.
The other thing is just going right to the source docs, because the source repo has all the same text that eventually ends up on the doc website. So rather than having it interpret all of that stuff, it could just read the source code to the SDK and then come up with things, secret backdoor tricks that aren't published. That'd be funny. What are some secret backdoor tricks based on this SDK? Here's the one that's related too, though, because we're just talking about video. So when will new AI features like generating a video from an image be included in the Gemini API or other ones? I already know the answer to this, which is you guys can't say because you have forward-looking statement restrictions.
That's bold of you to say, as if I have any idea. Maybe Andrew. And that is an honest answer from me.
Sure.
I don't have any insight into that.
I have that on a hotkey though. Anytime somebody asks a question about Google and when will, I just immediately paste that in. This is a forward-looking statement, and because Google's a publicly traded U.S. company, it cannot answer this question.
Yeah. I mean, what to certainly speak of, and where the realm of where you'd look for that there are a suite of published experimental projects, such as Video Poet, right? Which is not exactly the use case you're talking about, which is image to video, but is related, right? So I'd say check out what's happening there. It's always changing. I don't know offhand if there's a Google image to video as yet.
I think I was reading, I saw something about Vlogger. I think that was the project, the white paper that I was reading.
Right.
I was actually just looking at it yesterday, which is why I have not made the full way through.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there is some work going on there.
Yeah. I mean, as an aside, I will say kind of even things are moving so fast right now in general that day to day we're constantly discovering things ourselves, right? And this beyond just Google, it's all the way around. So what I've tried to do is try and set up mechanisms where, how can I make this news come to me?
Yeah.
I haven't cracked it yet, but there may well be from Richard, if you check tomorrow or you check now, there may be a Google project out there that does this.
Yeah.
It's not in the Gemini API, but it may be a separate project, and it may be in different states, right? Often these projects are in different states of here's a demo of what's possible, but it's not accessible yet, versus here's a closed preview that is being made available to a very specific set of people, to an open preview, to beta as Gemini is, some of the Gemini API is right now, or at least the SDKs.
Yeah, I think a lot of these research projects are folks working on finding out what the possibilities are. It might not be easily accessible to, a general developer like us at the moment, but over time, it's, the hope is, the work on, that research project ends up in a readily available consumer product, like even say like, Gemini, formerly Bard, right? Making it easily accessible to folks and developers as well.
Yep. And we have a question directly at our guests. When are you Flutter Googlers going to be presenting in Flutter London?
That's my my co-organizer from
Yeah.
George, jumping in there. Yeah,
So-
I mean, we would love to see
an
some
invite.
I mean,
Yeah,
I love London. Last time I was there for my talk after Flutter Forward, right? Yeah, it was after Flutter
Yeah,
Forward.
yeah. It was Flutter Forward extended. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was-
That was a great time. So I would always love to come back.
there you go. Open invitation.
So if we have any final questions for our Google guests, make sure you get them in the next couple of minutes, and we can let you. We'll respect your time and let you bounce out of here eventually soon. But I don't see anything else that's particularly about our guests just yet. Oh, how about that one? Speaking of dev tools, is Duet running on the Gemini model?
I don't know specifically if it's a Gemini model, but certainly, to be specific, I imagine you're talking about Duet AI for developers, which is part of Cloud Code extension for one, and then there's other Duet products as well that are embedded in other places. I don't know Gemini specifically, but it is underpinned by Google built models.
So it's not necessarily something that you can use using Vertex AI then, for example.
No, they're kind of different things. So again, like a Duet AI for developers is a self-contained product in itself, in the same way as formerly known as Bard. So it has a whole suite of, yes, as a model somewhere, there's a number of other things that hook into the developer experience, etc., that product team has built around it.
It's sort of it's a web application essentially. So while you're working on something related to developing with the clouds or even also workspaces, right? So if you have a Google workspace, you can ask questions about your mail and your docs and stuff, and I think that's also called Duet, if I remember right.
Yes, there's a variant that is that, and then there's a variant that is, for example, the Duet AI for developers in Cloud Code will do code generation, code exploration, that sort of thing, right in line in your tool set, in your IDE.
I've been signing up for everything that comes by that's an invite that talks anything at all about AI. So I've watched a lot of stuff. The terminology somehow blurs together, but yeah.
Yes.
This is so rapid now, so crazy. And to think this is
If
towards the end of my 5-year career or 5-decade career. So we'll see how far this goes. Yeah.
I was just going to say, if people want to try experimenting, there is actually a Google AI SDK example. You can find it in DartPay. I'll post a link to this, and then you just need to drop in your API key in the space provided, which I've just completely lost in the example. But that will then there you go.
If you hit run, I think.
Yeah, if you hit
It
run,
won't work. It won't work for me.
oh yes.
All right.
In the wrong part of the world.
Yeah,
Oh, wait.
It'll direct me, but they won't give me one. So yeah,
Okay.
yeah, API key, and then pop it in, and you can go from there. But I'll pop that link in the chat for anyone that wants to experiment and try this out. It's an easy way to get going with it.
Yeah.
I'm also gonna kind of name drop some other. Con, you want to talk about the extension as an example?
I mean, I'm happy to let you talk about it.
Yeah.
I was just gonna add as well, if you take a look at the pub package,
Yeah.
there's a bunch of Dart
Yep.
sample scripts, as well as that basically the same sample app that you can run as well locally. So you're not just set on Dartpad. If you wanted to take it and remix it and build it into, for your own use case, totally encouraging that as well.
So there's a Dart and Flutter app in the SDK. Is that what you're referring to?
In the package, yes, there's a sample Flutter app that's basically identical to the one we have on Dartpad.
Right, so
Yeah, I have that one compiled, and I have my own API key already in the right place in it. So I just keep pulling the new files and then rebasing my branch on it, and that way I have to keep typing my API key.
It should be at root samples.
that's
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, I'll pop that link in the chat for anyone that wants to go take a look.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah,
All
another
right.
thing to watch is on the Google, the ai.google.dev page, there is sort of a sub nav on there that's that says example applications. That's also a great place to see what some people are building. That list will continue to grow. It's not just Dart and Flutter specific, but I'm going to call out one Khan worked on recently, which built an extension as a theme generating extension underpinned by this. And similar, there's a repo. There's things you can look at as well as kind of concrete things to see what this might look like in action.
Yeah, and I can talk a little bit more about that as well. So the idea was, it's like, how can we use Gemini and AI to essentially help developers, right? And so we sort of prototyped out what a VS Code extension that would, I could describe a color scheme, and it would come out with the theme code that would insert in line, right? And given this was like a little pet project that we had for a few weeks, and I was like, okay, like let's just see what we can toss together. It was actually quite fun to work on, and we shared the full source code and things like that, so that folks could take it and remix it and just revamp it, make it better. So that was a super fun project to work on. And I think we have a build show coming out for building DevTools extensions as well. I think that's also a spoiler because we haven't announced it yet, but that'll be coming in the next few weeks. That we talk about building a DevTools extension that builds in the Google AI Dart SDK as well.
So it's ai.google.dev, and then down here on the left, you've got example applications.
Yeah, correct. And another one I'll mention that came across in the Flutter and Dart ecosystem is there's an extension, a coding assistant extension called Command Dash for VS Code currently. I believe it's command-dash.io, if I'm not mistaken. That's built by a team that's using the Gemini API underpinning this extension. So that's an example. Another one.
I'm making a note of this now. Yes. So I've been using, I stopped using Copilot about 6 months ago because I was concerned about it injecting GPL code into my expansions. And so I've been switched to the free Codium, Codeium, which promises that they respect licenses from the source material. And no GPL stuff at all in there. But it'd be interesting. I want to have a Gemini back one. It sounds like I'm about to go look at that after this show. Thank you.
What was the command-dash.io?
IO, yes.
Okay, all right. I'll pop that in the chat for people.
Cool. And here I thought I was going to get to work right after this show. No, that's never true. Find stuff to talk about in these shows. Cool.
All right. Is there any other AI related questions we can pop in the chat?
I'm looking. Nothing in the last few pages. I think there was one that was about notebook AI, which is sort of interesting here. Has anyone tried uploading pub package documentation and code to Google Notebook AI? I haven't had time to try.
I'm not even heard of Google Notebook AI, so yeah, I'm not the right
It's
person.
one of the
to ask there.
experiments on the labs page, and it probably is not available in the UK, as everything else is not available. So you probably haven't seen it either. I played with it a little bit. You basically can suck in PDFs and then ask questions about them. And so you're basically keeping like a field notebook and incorporating what you discover in articles that you're researching. Not a particular thing that I do very often. So I played with it once, and that was enough for me to know
quite
at least
interesting.
what
So
it was.
So if you're doing like a research topic, you could use the Notebook AI to kind of help you keep that
Right.
context.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And write your paper for you. So you're done. Soon. That's going to be a feature.
It's going to get, by the way, the paper will get graded by another AI.
Oh, and they will hallucinate a diploma for you.
They will discuss among themselves and stuff. And yeah.
Eventually they'll replace us all. It's true. Let's see. Any last ones here? Nothing particular about AI.
I mean,
if you need to take off, this is probably a good time to.
By the way, feel free to stick around. We're not
Yeah.
getting rid of you. I'm just saying that if there's no more questions and
Being
we've got
respectful.
topics coming to a national end, then please feel free. Otherwise, just stick around. We'll start. I think we'll start getting into the general questions, see what we've got in the queue, and we'll just open the floor up. Please make sure you put the questions in the chat with the queue in front, and we'll be around for the remainder of the hour to finish answering questions.
Yep. So here's the first one here. I want to implement live captioning in my app when the sound recording is going on.
You can head off, yeah?
All right. See you all. But
that was it.
Bye.
Okay. That was it.
Thanks again.
Cool. Thanks. So I've tried using Flutter TTS package, but it doesn't support continuous listening. That's too bad.
Implement live captioning in my app whilst recording. I mean, the thing is, there is support for this inside the operating system. So Android does support this built in. I would ask, what is your use case for what you're trying to achieve with live captioning? Are you trying to like extract this text for some other processing, or is it just to display on the screen? Because in that situation, I would just offer them to a direction to enable live captioning, and then you can then trigger the system's live captioning mechanism. That's what I would say.
And also the package is the text to speech. I thought it was maybe the speech to text. That way, while the video was speaking, like you were interpreting the speech and then translating it to text so that you can display it on like overlaid on top of the video. So maybe it should be the
just got that
speech to text one.
Yeah, I
right,
think
but
they
then
just got that backwards.
Yeah, but I mean, like that literally is built into Android now. It literally translates it for you live, right? So for those that don't know, obviously we're talking about specifically about Android here. Obviously, iOS has its own thing. I don't know that off the top of my head, but I'm sure it's got its own competing system. Captioning manager from API level 19. And you can actually call these APIs. So you can do your own little plugin. I don't know if there's a plugin on Pub. We can go look for one, see if someone's made
one. There is.
But you can actually use Gemini Gen and the Gemini package to call these functions straight from Dart. That's another option. But yeah, is audio captioning enabled? There you go. Is it enabled? You could, as listen changed, you could actually see what's happened there if it's changed. Caption style. I don't know if there's a trigger to enable. I'm pretty sure if we hunt around enough, we'll find that there's an intent that you can fire that will take the user to the system settings for captioning or prompt them to enable it.
And not that it's Gemini, but so just talking about AI in general. I know OpenAI's Whisper package has real-time listening, translating to real-time text capabilities. So
I do have. I mean, amongst all this AI stuff, for me, it's about having it run on device and not going off to some cloud third party. It's nice to say this, right? So first of all, from a developer perspective, it costs you a lot of money to run that stuff in the server side. Like it's heavy processing workloads. It's not an API. It's not like I'm going to go to a database and fetch something. No, it's underload heavy CPU utilization, not just for the AI side, but just for the processing of audio as well. So, you know, you don't really want to do that as a developer. Like you're absorbing, you might have your product for free. You're absorbing all the costs attached to that, right? They've got a device that's capable of doing this. Push it down to the device. Let the device do it. This is the same as what's happening on websites and web apps for years now, where the application actually runs in the browser, in JavaScript, on the person's computer, not in the cloud anymore, right? Lightening the load for what happens, and you can handle more users in a faster amount of time on the server side, having the client perform more actions, right? So just taking a step back on that one, yeah, like if you can find a TF, in that case, if you can find a TF Lite model, a TensorFlow Lite model, there's actually we can go search. There's a web page. They renamed it. It used to be called like TF. I'm gonna.
Well, while you're looking for that, I was just saying Whisper already is a library. It's an on-device library. It's not something where it's going to a cloud to do the translation. So
okay, I just found it. There used to be a site called TF Hub, and this is owned by Google. By the way, this is a Google thing. It's called Kaggle, which I think is a terrible name, to be fair. But,
who names these things?
Yeah,
why do they run out of names?
so it's kaggle.com for those that don't know, and on this website you can actually browse all the models, and there you go. Look, there's the Gemma model on device models that we were talking about earlier. That's got a bunch of. Let's have a quick look at that and see what it says. There you go. So this, because it's a TF Lite compatible model, you can obviously request access here, but then you download it, and then you can then put that into your app and ship it inside your app, or have your app download it from your server, and then you can use this on device, right? And there's a bunch of code examples that people have made, discussion around it, around this particular model and how you use it, the inputs, text string questions such as prompt or documentation to be summarized and generate the output. That's perfect. That's a great example there of a on-device model that has maybe a great use case. Obviously, you'd have to look through and see how it works. But yeah, I head to the bottom there. Hang on, let me just go down here. Model variations. Did I see that? Model variations. Ooh, so you can find other particular. There you go. Various models and how they work. I won't go into it right now. But anyway, yeah. So this model explorer lets you find a particular models that are designed for maybe a certain task. Let's say classification here. And you can find various models to do classification and try them out. So yeah, it's worth exploring. If you're looking for models, Kaggle seems to be a great place. I've been using that. So yeah.
Cool.
Right. Let's carry on. More questions.
Okay.
Feel free to put all your Flutter and Dart questions in, and I'm sure one of us can
and AI questions,
because we're and AI.
Today's topic is that. In fact, speaking of that, so many of these AI, including Android Studio Bot experiments, are not available in the UK. Differences in language? No. Differences in lawyers.
In policy.
Politics, yeah.
Yeah, so there's actually quite a few places in the EU that isn't available because they obviously have to deal with privacy and stuff in the EU. So I think they're playing it safe so they don't get a nice big fine from from the European Union.
And it's safer also to of course, they are a US company. They want to first kind of roll it out in phases. So first, of course, the US, and then they probably, once they've battle tested, maybe they will make it available to other countries. But yeah, it's mostly about privacy and all those issues than that.
Cool. All right, let's do another one here. This is a two-parter. I don't know if I should do a two-parter, but we'll give it a rack here. I've inherited a code base with lots of packages internal to our company. Good for you. Do you have tips and processes in place to keep your own apps up to date with Flutter upgrades, Gradle, external package versions? This is a standard nightmare.
So I tell you what I like doing in some situations. If there's a common set of third-party packages that all of your packages depend on, make one package that imports them and then exports them. So you have one pub/spec YAML then that you have to maintain with all your versions, and then you can import that into all of your internal libraries. So you can have a common libraries package internally that exports all the packages from its pub/spec YAML. That's simple, right? You can have a separate Dart file that you can for each package, and that way you just export the package as you would do. And import just the particular bits you need still. But it does mean that you've got one pub spec that you're actually trying to manage the dependencies with, and then the rest come free, which is quite a nice technique. There's obviously Flutter run outdated. What's it called? What's the command?
Flutter. Wow.
Flutter
pub outdated.
Outdated.
Yeah.
It is pub outdated, right? Yeah. And that's pretty good at showing you what you can upgrade to, given all the restrictions. So it basically works out the maximum. I think that's the command. It works out the maximum you can upgrade to, and works out what the minimum set of versions that would be non-conflicting, which is quite nice. But like anything, you should review each one, especially if you think Semver. You should be reviewing. If it's not a minor change, you should be definitely reviewing each one of those package upgrades. For sure.
And Lucas has a point here. If you have some of them in a mono repo, Milos now has a feature called shared dependencies.
Yeah. Nice.
So that would be cool.
I personally use Melos in a lot of projects now, and I recommend that for mono repo management for sure. The go-to tool.
My recommendation all the time when people have multiple projects. Within
there's a part 2 to this question.
I was about to find that. Okay, there you got it. So migrating from 3.10 to 3.19 has been an adventure. Ooh, yes, I know. There's a few breaking changes in there. Definitely a few breaking changes. I'm currently stumbling over Gradle build issues. With Gradle, I end up often just deleting the Android folder and recreating it, and that generally fixes most of the things. But that's a little scary.
So what you
copy everything out that's local.
To be fair, Gradle's always been this way. This is not like anything to do with Flutter. This is just an Android Gradle issue that's always been the problem since day one. It was even worse. Just be known that just want to be known that Gradle is way better than what we had before. So,
oh no!
I can only imagine. I'm literally trying to remember what the name was, and I can't remember. Gradle's been so long now, actually. But
what's it called? Stone Knives and Bearskins, maybe.
It's gonna bug the hell out of me now. I can't remember the very first build system that Gray were using.
Baling wire and Scotch tape.
Yeah, right. It's barbed wire and Scotch tape.
Command.com.
I think as Randall was saying, what I've always liked doing is if your code's checked into a repo, just delete your Android folder, do Flutter create dot. It regenerates the Android folder, and then you can use your Git tool of choice or do Git diff and see what's changed, and then you can then pick and choose the bits that you want to keep. That makes sense. But yeah, the migration, it is a pain. For those that don't know, there is a Flutter upgrade solution. Let me just bring this up. I did bring this up in it's this one here. I'll pop in chat and bring it up here briefly. It's imperative apply of Flutter Gradle plugin. So this is been a recent change that was added in 3.16, but it became a requirement. Is it 3.19? I think. So previously our Gradle files look like this, and then there's a new way that they need to be done. So basically, you specify your plugins. There's new sort of plugin system rather than the previous system, which was to I don't think it's in here somewhere. Anyway, some of there's some examples. I'll find it in a minute. But it talks, it was apply plugin basically. So you remove these lines and you add the other lines, and the guide is pretty well formatted, but I don't think it, like the minus and the plus here is to indicate these are the lines you should remove, these lines you should add. But if you walk through it and read it clearly, it does explain exactly what to do. But
wow.
Yeah, I think it's always nice to just do Flutter create dot and Yeah. So it tells you there, Flutter create different Flutter versions. You should also consider using the latest build files. So
I have an interesting quirk about Flutter create dot that I don't know if you've stumbled across. When you do Flutter create Fred, you're creating a directory name Fred, and then everything sits below it. When you're doing Flutter create dot, you have to be in the directory.
Yeah.
However, some people create a directory, when they do the Flutter create, obviously, and then they rename it to be capital and lowercase. And then they put it in Git that way, so that when you get clone, it gets it as this weird mixed capitalization name. If you do Flutter create dot inside there, it says that's not a valid package name.
Yeah. So it's interesting you say that. Yeah. I honestly, this is one of my pet peeves. Like any file names, anything you put into your project, always lowercase and always. I prefer underscores to. I know people put hyphens, but hyphens can be detected as minus symbols depending on how it's put in there. So underscores preferential, but always lowercase because
I always do lowercase, snake case. That's what they call it, with a lower underscore. Keep it consistent.
Yeah, and because the thing is, there's different operating systems have different handling for files with different case sensitivity.
Yeah,
and that throws you out for a hoop. And then you've got the problem that you try and like process certain file names. It's the reason why there was a long term, and it's not so problematic now, but for many years, if you had any path that had a space in the file name, it would just break all your build scripts, right? Because it would see that as two commands, like in any sort of parameter that's been specified, and it would just blow up in your face. So you would not use spaces in your paths, right, on purpose. You know what I'm talking about? And Randall must know from his Perl days and everything else. Like,
yeah.
The fact of the matter is that you try not to put any special symbols, or just keep it basic ASCII underscores, as simple as possible, so that it's consistent across all platforms and all technology.
That's also one of the reasons why, like, having Perl deal with all the file names without ever having them get anywhere near white space processing, like shell scripts was actually making things more secure, because we could have a directory name with a new line in it and it still worked. Whereas if you do that with a shell script, everything just breaks up and goes crazy. But yeah, new line is a legal character in a directory name and a file name.
To be honest, it's one of my pet peeves that there's no like command line argument parsing built into operating systems as like a de facto standard. Like, it's down to each app to decide. They get given the string and go for it, do what you want with it. And it's like,
yes,
right. So each app can just do those parameters slightly differently. There's conventions that luckily we've gained over the years with open source, like double dash and the full name, or a single dash with a single character, and like things like. But it varies. Like, you get some old software. I saw some old software which just felt so wrong to me, which was a single hyphen and then full words for each of the parameters. So it was like minus config, and then you specify the config.
Yeah.
Minus, and just like, it just felt wrong to me.
A find is like that. Find -m time -c time.
Yes.
Dash length. So it's just a single dash and then the word. Yeah. So that's been true for since the early existence of Unix.
The thing is, they couldn't. Here's the problem: they can't change those, because it's now embedded so many scripts and so many other things. Right? There's a legacy there. If they are going to build it, it's going to be a breaking change. They have to like put out beacon alert symbols, like a lighthouse, across all mailing lists to tell people it's going to change. The stuff's going to break on such and such date, right? Like the Linux, what's the Linux Millennium date? That's going to come up
2038.
2028, yeah. When
2038.
1st of January 2028, right? Or something. It's 38.
Yeah,
and
right.
it's just going to like,
all
our Linux systems are just going to die.
Right? That's the new Y2K. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, right. The Y2038. Yes.
Exactly.
But also, with respect to that, it's like GNU went through and tried to standardize all the flags, and that made them incompatible with BSD's equivalent versions. So, like, for example, tail-10 for me was always the last 10 lines of the file, but then GNU said, no, that -10 is not a real, -L10 or whatever. I forget what it is in GNU land. But so you have to learn the GNU versions of all these flags, as well as all the BSD versions of all these flags, and then hope that you have the modern enough version to have the flags that you want. So, let's see. We got a couple more questions here. This one's probably going to be an interesting one. What's your consumer pattern in Dart? And is there a Dart equivalent of the .NET blocking collection? I don't know .NET at all. Hopefully one of you two do.
Is it the blocking collection? Probably like maybe like a threat safe type of collection where you want, for example, like multiple threads adding to the same collection. My .NET days are like way behind. I can't recall.
Okay, so these things, it's thread safe collection class that provides the. Okay, I'm going to blow your mind, Duncan. You don't have this problem in Dart. So generally speaking, Duncan, that all your code that runs inside Dart runs with coroutines, right? So this is it's a single thread. You can have multiple threads. Just hold on. You have what's called an isolate, which runs a single thread of execution, and it schedules coroutines. And any time that an async or an await comes up in the code, that gives the main loop a chance to schedule something else, or to pause letting the operating system to perform some asynchronous I/O. So, for example, when you want to read from a file, you can use the synchronous methods if you need to block. However, by default, it's the asynchronous methods, and this means that whilst the operating system is performing its asynchronous I/O, the code will choose something else on to schedule on the thread. Basically, you have to be doing one specific synchronous piece of work with all blocking, without any asynchronous workload, to actually skip a frame inside your Flutter app. And it's not very common. When it is when you do need to do some sort of hard for example, we're talking about this AI stuff, right? You're going to go off and call some API that's built into the operating system, like TensorFlow Lite. That's going to go spin up its own thread and do its own thing. So you have to be concerned about that, right, in your code. However, if you were to maybe write your own AI stuff completely from scratch, and that's your magical thing that you want to do for whatever reason, then that's going to just be sitting there consuming CPU cycles, trying to do its AI thing.
It moved right while I was trying to hit it. I hate that when it moves when I'm trying to hit it. This will it take advantage of multiple CPU cores? Interesting question.
Yeah. So this is complicated. There's, in short, no. However, you can. So that's the next.
Then remember, because when you're within one single isolate, you don't share the memory space with other isolates, so you won't run into that situation unless you you try to force it to have that situation.
I'm going to be also open. You can actually do shared mem. So the standard shared mem blocks that you get from like a Linux-based operating system, for example, you can call those APIs, and you can share a piece of memory. You can do all this kind of stuff with FFI. You're then going to have to deal with locking and stuff. But for the most part, during standard sort of Dart code and everything else, you're not. So dealing with lists as your initial example, you're not going to have this problem. So there is a great page on this. I'll see if I can find it for you. There's actually a couple of, I think they broke up into a couple of different places now. Hang on, let me just find it. That's the one, isn't it? I think that's the one. The one time I want it to load the first time, it doesn't. That's the one. So let's see if I can get this up on the stream here, and I'll pop a link in the chat.
There's also a shared map. Shared map for getting across isolate boundaries is also cool. I put that in there.
Shared map, yeah. There's actually several things that work really well across isolate boundaries. For example, there's the shared uint8 list stuff. I can't remember what it's called now. But by default, when you're trying to access a block of memory across two isolates, it will actually access the same block of memory and do mapping of it rather than actually copying it. Again, making that more performant. But these are all things you don't really have to care about for the most part. But concurrency in Dart here, which explains the sort of the high level here. So how this works in the event loop and and so on and such like, and give some examples here of where async and await comes in. There's another page. Is it Ralph? No. Who's the Dart? Who's the Dart engineer that actually did was it like an internal? Oh, hang on. I think I know.
Well, look, it's right over there. It says like, remember what I was mentioning, like, you have like your own kind of like memory space, but still it says no shared state between isolates, means concurrency complexes like mutex or locks won't occur in Dart. If you definitely want to, for example, if you do Dart FFI, and then let's say you have something in C++ trying to process something, but then you're trying to also do it from another isolate, okay, you may get into that issue, but normally not trying to get into the low level details of that, you won't get into that situation.
Okay, trying to find this. There's another interesting, for those that are actually interested in the internal workings of Dart. There's so I posted this link in the chat, didn't I? The live one, yeah. There's another great interesting link by one of the Dart engineers. I forgot. Slava, that's it, Slava. He's away on holiday at the moment, so don't bother him. But I don't think he's back yet. But this is a great explanation of the internal workings of how things like isolate groups work and all the very technical stuff that you might be interested in. So that is in the chat. It is heavily detailed. It is not for the faint of heart.
Wow.
But if you want to, you can go look that up, and that's kind of an interesting read. But coming back to the concurrency, yeah. So coming back to concurrency, you'll also find a section in here about isolates, how they work, and how asynchronicity works as well. I don't think I need to sort of take you through it. I mean, we do cover these things off quite a lot. The specific question, sorry, coming back to the point, was producer consumer pattern in Dart. Yeah, so you don't really have this problem because of its single-threaded nature. You can still achieve this with isolates and messaging if you're trying to do some specific two different workloads, and that is just sending messages across. So basically, you're sending messages across, and then obviously you queue them up on the remote, for example, and you can do that on both sides. I feel like I've seen a package that did this. I think the isolate package got demoted. Is it isolate agents? Is this the one?
The workers package. Something worker queue, worker bundle, whatever.
I forget. Sorry. What were you saying?
Simple enough to build your own. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not that complicated. If you've got experience with some of this stuff, it is, the worker stuff. That's web workers, I think. You're just talking about.
Oh no, there was one that's sort of generic worker.
I mean, I literally just chucked in isolate queue in pub here, and boom, you've got a
easy isolate.
Async task, similar to thread pools, all Dart platforms transparently without having to deal with isolate complexity. That sounds like what you want. All the reasonable code size, Apache license, all the good stuff.
It's more of a wrapper around again isolates to make it look like you're like working on a multi-threaded environment.
Yeah, there you look. Parallelism 2, sequential false.
Exactly.
Async executor. So it's very similar to like the Java executor model. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, like, sure. I mean, are they in this shared data as well? So yeah, try it out. See how it goes.
Alrighty.
I guess next question.
Yep, here. I'm a Flutter dev from Uzbekistan. Could you tell me your opinions about Flutter Flow? Do we have opinions about Flutter Flow? It's generated code's performance and predictions about no-low coding in Flutter.
But the only thing that I don't like about the low code, no code tools, again, nothing wrong about Flutter Flow. I love the whole team of Flutter Flow. Is the bloated code that sometimes it generates. But Flutterflow is one of the few ones that actually doesn't generate like that much bloat. You still need to kind of tweak it a little bit. But to my my preference is still But if I had to pick one, Flutterflow would be one of those ones.
The other side, the one thing I don't know if Flutterflow have solved this yet. I've still yet to really have a good discussion with them around this kind of stuff. We've been talking about having a show for them, so we can talk about this kind of stuff. So if you're interested in that, let us know, and we'll try and arrange that. But the always had the whole sort of low code generation piece has been around for years and years and years. This has been from the very day one. Like the idea that you can write code that generates more code for you. This isn't something new, right? But there's always this problem, and that is how do you close the loop? That is, how do you take the output of what you generated, put it back in as your input, and make modifications to it? And no one's really solved that, not effectively. You can do it with simple examples, but when the soon as you start adding multiple files, complexity, and everything else, it's like this very well, I can't remember what the complexity. It's like that expanding complexity, like exponential complexity is kind of problem, right? Like where. So for example, I'll give the example that I'd say, like you put something together in Flutterflow, you generate this lovely UI, you move some things around the UI, you decide to put some custom code in that's outside of their system. So you export it, you add your custom code changes, and now you go, but I wanted to change that color of that thing. Well, you go back into Flutterflow, do it.
You can't re-import it, exactly.
But then you have to export it and then make the same modifications again. The same problem that we were talking about. In fact, we just spoke about this with the Android code generation, right? So you delete your Android folder to regenerate again because you can't really modify it once it's been done because you may have made code changes to it. So that's why they present these guides to say how to manually change things that you have to go through because it can't do that at the moment, right? So it's that same thing. You could obviously, if you just want to change a color, well, then you could find out where that color is inside the exported code and change it, right? But you can't go back. It'd be very difficult to go back to your code generator to make that change and then apply things. So I think the key from what I can tell from my experience in this area as well, in terms of doing it, is to have hooks. These are specific mechanisms in their whole system that let you hook in and do custom code. And then it's more about you then applying custom code within the Flutterflow system. They probably do this so that you never leave Flutterflow. You never have to export and have this problem. That's the solution. But again, at some point you go, if it doesn't do the thing I need to do and I can't do it with the tools built into this code generation platform, then you're going to have a problem. The only way to solve that is to export. And at that point, you've probably outgrown Flutterflow at that point, right? At the point that you can no longer use it to build your app, at that point, Flutterflow has to grow with you, and you can maybe go back to the team and ask them to do stuff. Otherwise, you migrate away. And that's always, there's going to be a point, that tipping point at some point where you go, okay, it's no longer worth it for me. But it got me going. That's
totally,
yeah. It's a good first tool, perhaps.
Agreed.
So yeah, that's kind of the story on that. So let's go on to the next one here.
I will say. This just took me back to my childhood for a second here.
Okay.
I'm going to say, so I knew Basic. Basic was the language that I wrote a lot of software in at the time.
You still have Basic, yeah.
And I heard about the C++ and the C language, and you can do all this stuff. There's APIs, and you can call these things in different operating systems, and how good this was. And Basic was just what you got kind of as a high level. And I found there was like a Basic to C converter. So I learned C at the very beginning. When I learned C was to put my Basic in, convert it to C, and then try and understand the similarities between these two things. And that was my very first sort of, I think, trying to take me back, I think it was one of my very first learning new languages. It was like Basic to C. And that kind of conversion tool helps. And it's that kind of thing that you can get from this, right? You get a learning age. You don't know Flutter, right? But Flutterflow will get you on that journey early, will get you sort of the code generator. And then you start looking at the output. You do stuff in Flutterflow and look at the output. And you go, oh, so that's how you do that thing. And then you can gain knowledge that way. So that's
and,
nice.
and just a short comment. There was another like low code Flutter tool I think like 1 or 2 years back, and actually no, I remember. I think it was the Adobe XD Flutter to Dart, and only generated was a bunch of positioned items within a stack, and I'm like, oh,
I know.
This is not maintainable at all. Yeah, exactly.
I know, this is it. I've seen so many of them. There was some other ones I saw, some Figma ones as well, and I was just like, when I looked at the output, it's like, oh my god, this produced.
This is not maintainable at all.
I literally it produced. I think it was 5,000 lines of like UI code, and I did it in 70 lines of code.
I believe you. I believe you.
This is like people on the UI UX channel on the Discord often say, how do I do this thing? And my standard answer for that is take a screenshot and use a single image widget, and that will be that thing. Yes, they don't talk about the variation. They don't talk about what's adjustable in it, what moves, none of that. They just go, how do I make this? And I go, screen grab.
Screen grab it. That's so true. Awesome. Expression.
I'm crazy that way. I spend way too much time on the Discord. Apparently, sometimes I just get bored with answering this. Kind of like reminds me of the gunshot in Indiana Jones, or no, Raiders of the Lost Ark, where he just pulls out the gun. Yeah, that was just like that. Don't bring a gun to a sword fight. Right.
I before we go on to another time, I'm gonna share this. I found it. I was like, what was it called?
Oh,
basic.
Ooh. I love the colors.
Totally from the 90s.
It's still alive. I mean, I'm surprised that it's still alive. Yeah, it's exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. Still alive. Yes. Okay.
64-bit apparently.
Woo! 64. All 64 bits. Yes. Any ideas about how one could parallel download compiled WASM to optimize Flutter web loading?
Parallel download compiled WASM. I mean, don't you just import it like you do JavaScript, so you can just do the async script tags?
Yeah, I think so.
The browser will then async download it.
You could do that. You could also tap into probably maybe the I think can you tap from Dart? You can access like the service worker from the browser and then probably like download it that way. I mean, you can do like a service worker, download the WASM, and then even you can like call APIs inside of the WASM once you download it. But then again, I haven't tried it, but I think that might be one way to do it.
And I think with deferred libraries, you can also
deferred
separately loaded pieces that would load asynchronously once you get to that part of your app, and you could probably load them all right in your main.
Yes.
Just load all your imported lives, but they're all going to show up as separate payloads, I think. Hopefully. Otherwise, what's the point of having the deferred thing, right?
Yeah. I think the other side of this is that if you start using Worker or something like that, there's a lot of management overhead you've got to write, right? And
you got to do it.
It's like, it's not going to be simple.
And this next one is from our friend Pradeep, which he's pretty good at coming up with slightly vague questions. So, how does send and receive stream a video to the server for WebRTC SFE livestream? By doing it, by writing the code to do it. There are RTC packages, right? So, yeah.
A bit facetious, but yeah. In the end is Pradeep, you're opening up a connection to a server. This is called sockets. You should go read up about that first of all. Then, the question is, what do you have on the server side? So you need to code some stuff on the server to receive. You need to code some stuff on the app to send. And this is just standard socket coding. You can just do this. Nothing stops you. However, the internet is a wild place, and connecting to random ports and servers is not something that is allowed on all internet traffic. Most internet traffic is web-based, which is HTTP or HTTPS. And then that goes into a thing called WebSockets. WebSockets is basically the same thing as sockets, but it starts up as a HTTP connection, and it gets upgraded or converted to a socket connection, allowing you to sort of tunnel your socket traffic over HTTP. But there's plenty. I recommend you learn about this stuff because every developer should know about this stuff. Communication and transit of data is a big portion of what every developer should understand, especially over a network. what sockets are, what protocols are, IPv4, IPv6, all this kind of stuff. It's all stuff you should know. Now,
yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, but then what you've built on top of this is WebRTC. WebRTC is a protocol like HTTP that does it all for you. So the idea is that if you go grab a package that just does WebRTC, you should be able to take advantage of that package's code that does all this socket stuff for you. But then you need to have, again, a receiver and a sender and WebRTC compatibility on both ends.
Yeah.
You might be able to find some open source package that does WebRTC as a server and can like retransmit things. And then you've got like as a package on pub, you probably find something that sends and receives, right? But yeah.
Cool. All right, next question here. How do you recommend to check a widget's position relative to its parent? Golden tests are the only way. I'm thinking is the relationship to testing. So how can you test a widget's position relative to its parent? Or is this on the dev side, just during live production?
You could no. I mean, every widget will have a render object. Well, anything you display on the screen will have a render object. That render object, you can do what's called global to local, and you give an ancestor. So what you're doing is you actually want the reverse. You want local to global. So you take your inner child widget, you find the render object on it. So you get the context and you find render object, cast it to a render box, and then you do local to global. The local offset is always 0 because that's the top left. That's the position you're trying to work out where the position is. And then your ancestor is the parent, and it'll literally give you exactly what you asked for, the relative position, the distance between the child to the parent in one function call. I will go grab you the API and pop it in the chat just so you know what I'm talking about. But
I just realized I have an inner child widget.
Oh dear. The dad jokes.
Well, grandpa jokes now, actually, but that's another story.
Yeah, so the API looking for is local to global. You specify the ancestor, which is your parent that you're trying to relative to, and then the point would be 0, 0 or offset.0. And then that will give you the distance, the offset between this render box that you're doing it on to this ancestor.
For example, let's say you have a container, let's say 500 by 500 within a screen which is 1024 by 768, and then let's say you have a little widget inside of that, container stack wrapped inside a position, and then you have it, let's say, in a specific position. If you want to know the location within the immediate parent, which is a container, as opposed to the screen, then this is the way to go.
And you do this by finding the render objects.
Yeah, finding the render object, which gives you again, you can do the global position, you can get the local position. Global position gives you the position from the whole screen, and then the local position in relative to its parent.
So this is just terminology, just to be clear. Local coordinates are local to the widget itself. So that means from 0, 0 being top left goes into negative coordinates, right? And then positive coordinates going out, downwards, and to the right. And then global is the entire frame, the entire window that you're rendering to. And that, again, is 0, 0 top left, not bottom left, just to be clear.
Yeah, that's why when you add something like to a stack, it always like goes to the 0, 0 top left corner.
The origin point on a stack can actually be changed with the align parameter on a stack.
Oh yeah, you could do like alignment center, and then everything gets like stuck in the center. But I mean default, let's say.
I know. I'm just make sure
yes.
Okay. All right, Nick. Do you have more questions? Please feel free to put your questions in the chat. Otherwise, we get to end.
Yeah, you got a few more. Oh, here we go. Yeah. I like this one. I don't know if you're going to answer it, but
that's when we were talking about the naming convention. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's an interesting point. There should be no reason why. I mean, literally, would have to try this out because I've never wanted to do this.
Oh no, do it.
No, I don't want to.
Make a folder that has a red dot in it for urgent.
I know. Roman is trying to try this right now on your own. I would say yes. In short, this would be my guess right now because
it probably depends.
Unicode
Mac probably does
all file names now on modern operating systems are Unicode compatible, UTF-16, UTF-8, and they support all the emojis. I can see how, though, that some systems that process those files may not, but I would not recommend it for the life of me. And I will mention that again. I feel a bit like some languages let you use Unicode in the variable names, so you can do things like a omega symbol or a delta symbol for like a delta. So you can actually have the actual mathematical symbology in your code as part of the variables. Dart does not let you do this. This irks me a little bit because I'm like, there's certain times I want to express something, but I'm having to express it in English words, you know, like, so I kind of feel it'd be interesting to see if at some point Dart could support Unicode for its identifiers, because then I think that would open up the possibility of having things like Cyrillic and Chinese and other languages being used for programming rather than just English. And as much as I like I'm English and I use English, I think it should be more flexible.
Remember, there's
digression.
There's trouble with Mac OS interpreting Unicode because there are sometimes multiple ways to represent the same combined character, and it doesn't canonicalize it.
Yeah,
so you end up with file names that don't match, that look exactly the same, and when you interpret them back as, you know, UTF-16, they are exactly the same, but not how it is on the disk. Yeah, just crazy.
So this is a problem with how people have written text handling. Text handling for years has been byte based, right? Mm-hmm. Every character has been byte for byte, which means that it's one of the reasons. Okay, so for people that don't know, should I do this? Yeah, I'll do this briefly. So for since day one, you know, we've had different lengths of words. These are like the unit of access that CPU has. And 8-bit turned out to be quite a good measure in the early computers. And when we went to double it to 16, 32, powers of 2, it made sense. But at one time, there's 12-bit words, there was 7-bit words, there was 6-bit words, there was all sorts of things going on. Right. Now, what happened was ASCII was invented as an American standard for code information interchange. That's what ASCII stands for. And it's the first 7 bits of a byte can represent, and what those 7 bits represent, i.e. characters from a table. You can go look up the ASCII table. Yeah. Again, every developer should know this. What's interesting is if you remove 1 bit, you can go between uppercase and lowercase. If you can actually detect magical things about the way that is laid out. It's very clever. However, there was another, the top bit indicates the top 128 characters out of the possible 256 that you can have. And that's the extended ASCII character set, and that was down to the code page that you're using. Essentially, so you could switch that out for lots of different things. There was a standard set, and then there was a set for each different language. And this was kind of like the way they got around to trying to support multiple symbols and languages, but it didn't work because it wasn't enough space to store every possible language and combination. And they're called, what are they called, EDBIC codes or something, EDBI codes. I don't know, there's a code page stuff.
Anyway. EBCDIC?
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, back to the point. So this is how it started off. Deep in the woods. But I want to give you some baseline. Because so you've got that right as a basis, byte by byte, and for most people, you compare a string, and what you're actually comparing at the time are the bytes. Are the series of bytes and are these series of bytes the same? Then these two strings are the same, right? That's how you would do text comparison and manipulation to be on the byte base. Then what happened was we need to expand, and Unicode came along as the winning standard. There was a couple of different things floating around at the time. Unicode, and the way that Unicode works is the upper bit indicates there's another byte, and the next upper bit indicates another byte. This is UTF-8. This is kind of one of the standards of Unicode. Is UTF-16, which is where there's 16-bit blocks, and again they can be extended by the upper bit. Now it's quite Unicode has a lot of things in there, like how to join diacritics. You might have an O with the umlaut above the 2 dots, for example, and how these things join together. And it gets really, really complicated because it has to express every written symbol that we have as a language. However, again, as I said, the way that you interpret Unicode is dependent on the format it's in. And Unicode 16, UTF-16, UTF-32, UTF-8 are all different ways of representing that, and they're not the same. And this is what we're talking about. So you might have an emoji might be 4 bytes of UTF-8. It might be, let's say, 6 bytes of UTF-8, and then be 2 conjoining UTF-16 characters. They also actually have graphing clusters. You have ways of right to left. What happens if you have a right to left in the middle of one of these graphing clusters? There's a bunch of other complexity. And if you don't interpret, if you just interpret byte for byte, it wouldn't be the same. However, this is why UTF-8 wins in a lot of situations, because it's based on 8-bit boundaries. It means they should be the same. So you can do the same cheap comparison of processing UTF-8 that you would do on other systems. And that's why UTF-16 and 32 have kind of lost in terms of Unicode usage, and UTF-8 has become the de facto standard. However, it is wide-ranging, and it's interesting to read up on. I recommend it.
Roman's got to drop off here, so thanks for
stopping
stopping
by,
by,
Roman.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
We'll see you soon. Take
Yeah.
Cheers. Welcome back anytime. Yes. I wanted to continue though with that, but just for a second, which is like the question of the naive way to reverse a string in Dart is, Dart and then go character by character at, and reverse that list. And that's not actually correct. You need to use the characters package, and then it can give you a list that you can reverse. Yes, right. Are you finding characters to be able to do this? Right. Everybody should know about this package, especially dealing with any of the issues we were just talking about in terms of UTF-8, UTF-16, all that stuff. Characters is, again, published by Dart Dev, so it's a core package, but it's in pub. So you do have to remember to go fetch that. And it has a great description of these 3 or 4 layers of graphemes versus like there. Yeah, exactly. So
also known as Unicode extended grapheme clusters, or grapheme clusters, which is what I was just talking about. So this is about like what sort of groups of bytes represent, so yeah, here bytes, the physical sort of structure, and then you got code units. So if you look at a string, whenever you use a string in Dart, you have dot code units. That is an integer for each character. Now it might only be 8 bits, but it could be 16, it could be 32. It could be more, because Unicode extends over a wide-ranging set. So as you can see here, using UTF-8 or 16, it should be the same. So string.code units is a way of accessing those. Then you start getting into runes and characters, which is human perceivable things. And the world as you know it starts because, again, it's kind of interesting, right? Because what was it like what was it? Is it cuneiform? Like the way that you lay things out and the groupings of things is like it's completely different. So like it's like having languages go right to left or top to bottom, and then change and flip. Like I think it was ancient Greek that would literally do like a zigzag pattern. I think it was.
Yeah, something.
And it would just change. It would be like left to right, and then it'd be right to left at some point.
Was it Bodestrophion? Some word like that. Bodestrophion.
But I think
right to left, left to right, alternating.
Yeah, but generally
something with a
speaking,
BODE. Yeah.
But generally speaking, the idea of Unicode is have one code that everywhere in the world can communicate. And we haven't had. You don't believe how you didn't have that at some point. My system, let's say my computer system here, couldn't talk to your computer system because we had different ways of sending data to each other that were incompatible. This was very common. Like IBM computers can only talk to other IBM computers, right? So now that we have these Unicode and we have a standard, it's I'm arguing about it. It's really revolutionary, and people don't know this, right? Like it's one of those hidden wonders of computer programming and the computing world. The fact that we have a universal standard that has characters in it that are not even they're from dead languages, even, right? That when you have a history project and you're trying to represent these things on a computer screen, you actually have what they should be as characters, right? And they can be represented by a font, by a typeface. Anyway, I digress.
The word I was looking for is Bostrophodon. That's a style of writing where the direction of lines alternates. One line will read right to left, the other will read left to right. Thank you, Bard, for giving me the answer to this question.
No, it's not Bard, it's Gemini. It's Gemini.
I'm gonna keep calling it Bard now on because it's so much easier to think of in my head. Takes up less space, takes up 2 fewer characters. It's kind of nice that way. We're down to the last few questions, and we're also just at the top of our 3rd hour here. So probably just wrap these up and call it a day.
Yeah.
Okay, so
all right, next one from
from
Twitter. Oh, yeah.
Let's see.
Any Flutter way to do multi-threading in web? Yes, use workers. There you go. So there is actually some packages out there. It's not like there's no. It's package web. So there's a new package called web. If I can find it. So this replaces this package web replaces Dart HTML, and this I believe has worker interface for web workers. There you go. And this allows you to essentially run code in multiple threads, essentially, right? So you can run some code in a web worker. I don't know the full details, but it's specifically the web workers API, which you can go look it up. Talks about how you do all this, and it's all compatible through the web package in Dart.dev. So it's not necessarily multi-threading in that sense, but it means that you can run multiple things at the same time. And it's the same. It's in regards. It's the same stuff that we've just been talking about in terms of these are 2 different isolated spaces, and they can communicate with each other through messaging.
There are packages that will, depending on whether you're on a VM or on the web, will use either isolates or web workers transparently. But again, once you do an interface like that, you're taking the least common denominator of both interfaces, so you don't get all the flexibility that you would have if you use strictly a worker and then strictly write your own code for isolates too. So, but there are packages. I'd some of that complexity away from you.
Wait, here you go. Look, I just stuck it in pub. Isolated worker, a single isolated worker for all platforms. On most platforms, it uses Flutter isolate, except on web where it uses a worker instead. There you go. Apparently, it's easy to use. Identical syntax to compute. Not one-off. Available on web. There you go.
Hey,
run some heavy calculation. There you go.
Yep.
So,
I do that every day. Every day I do a heavy calculation. It's pretty clear. All right, moving on. Any experience running runtime interpreted Dart from a compiled Dart app? I want to allow users to execute simple Dart scripts within my app. I pointed him at the
Dart remote. Which one?
Dart _eval.
Yeah, that's one. What was it called? Hang on. That actually might be a flexible Dart bytecode compiler interpreter written in Dart. Enable dynamic execution of Dart IoT. Oh, interesting. I've not looked at that before, so I'm not gonna directly recommend that. But you might want to check out the remote Flutter widgets package. So this was made by Hixie. I believe he still maintains it. This is by Flutter.dev. This allows you to essentially send down layouts to your app and have your app generate them. So, but what's interesting is you can do this kind of thing, right? So as you can see here, like import core widgets, create a widget with this and that, and link up code. And there's some really interesting ways that you can actually interpret that code at runtime and actually use it. And he's got a whole system. I think it was built with Petit Parser. But that might be an interesting thing to look at if you're looking for a good example.
It uses code stolen from the analyzer. It doesn't use.
Does it?
No.
I'm trying to remember what I saw.
Because it's they're copied from the tokenizer and all that stuff from the analyzer.
Interesting. Elkov passing dev. Obviously, he's doing coverage.
Yeah. If you look at it.
Oh, okay. I'm trying to remember where the hell it was now. Argument decoding content. Anyway, I won't bore you, but yeah, it's worth maybe looking through and seeing how it's done. But
cool. Yes, Darty Also, just for fun, if you just want to play with one on the command line, Puro, my favorite tool now that's replaced FEM for me, Puro has an eval mode that you can just type an arbitrary string and it runs it in whatever version of Flutter you want to choose, because you could say Puro-E environment name. But also it has a REPL. You can do Puro-E and an environment name, and it will give you a REPL, and you can type interactive Dart code. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, so I mean, like those things work fine if you've got a non-compiled Dart AOT app, right? Because you've actually got the entire interpreted engine available to you.
Yeah.
Fred, the reason why you have to do something like this that we're doing is because when you're AOT compiled, you don't have the full Dart runtime environment. You know, you could ship that, but then obviously that's a lot more that you're trying to add to your app. So it's probably better to have a simple, maybe familiar syntax that they can use. And I think that Dart eval stuff looks interesting.
Yeah. Worth looking at.
I've never used that, not even looked at it. So, but
Yep.
yeah.
Okay, one final question, which is more of a thinking question. So I have a project, a bike rider rental app. I have no idea about system designing, and I'm the only developer. My question is how to build this kind of app. What should I keep in mind? Start building the app. Hire somebody who knows how.
Is that Randall going, hire me?
Exactly.
It's interesting. Like so Adil, I mean, like you have a project. So you've already going to build this, right? You either want to build this because it's your own, or you've been asked to build this, or whatever else. I think, you know, if you're talking about the entire architecture of that kind of project, sadly, you know, how to build this kind of app, what should I keep in mind when starting to build it? I mean, I think the question is, you're saying is what design should I use, right? Or how is this architected, or how is this? I mean, I could briefly go over some information. What I would recommend is having experience building apps, but
years of
I mean,
leading to answering this, though, always.
yeah, oh no, but that's the thing, and I'm like, you know, you're going to come across problems along the way. They're going to have changes to your architecture, to the way you look at it. It's not until you get the full scope of finer details that you're actually going to have a final architected design. I'll be honest with you, that's the way it goes. So there's obviously experience that leads you in the right direction, but you have to like take ownership, trying to understand what you're building, and then you can then adjust it and have it change over time as requirements change, right? So, for example, you said bike rider rental app. So I'm assuming this is like maybe one of these schemes where you have a bike and it has a lock-in system, and you can unlock it with an app, right? That kind of thing. I'm assuming that's what you mean. If you're still here, that'd be great to have a positive thing on that. Well, first is obviously there's a physical device attached to that. In that situation, you need to obviously have information about what that is and how it works and how you might communicate with it, and what the security mechanism is like and how that works. Normally what you want in any secure system is to have the security triangle, right? This is have three parties talk to each other. So, for example, in this case, the lock on the bike has an internet connection that goes to a server, and then your app also goes to a server, and then they're both comparing against the third party, right? This is how you get the security. If, on the other hand, you have maybe a cheaper device which is communicate directly with, like over NFC or some other system like that, then your application can generate those signals using the operating system APIs to like communicate with an NFC device or RFID based device. But in that situation, you're exchanging directly, which means you have to have keys, or you have to maybe take a challenge from the device, transfer it to your mobile phone. Your mobile phone connects to a server. Then that with the challenge then gets encrypted by the third-party server and sent back down so you can confirm it with the device. So the device then knows to unlock. But that's a mechanism you're going to have to go think about. Like, it depends on about your scenario, right? So that's like in terms of just unlocking. And the rental side of it is quite straightforward, right? The rest of it is that's the specific magical bit, right? That you can unlock these devices with your phone in some fashion, right? The actual bit about how you charge a user, that's quite, I mean, in all things, that's done a lot of applications. There's tons of information online about how you go around billing people, right? There's and there'll be different scenarios, like trying to think of some of the different invoicing solutions, and there's one that starts with S. It just leapt out of my mind. Stripe, that's the one. Stripe. So Stripe, for example, you might go look at their API and integrate that with your app and how that works in your server. So that once someone authorizes with the server, it does the challenge response. Then the server gets the confirmation to go bill that user for the amount of money for that session or whatever it is. Yeah. The other side of this is you've got the actual building of the app and like the display of the data, what things you've had in your history of rentals and all this. That is standard. That is pretty much your bread and butter of applications, right? That is, you've got an API, it has a database that all the app users can connect to. And so they all connect using this API. This might be Firebase, this might be Firestore, there's some off-the-shelf version, Superbase. There's a ton of options out there. And the general gist is that your app is, and so the actual application is a tiny little bit of this whole system, right? The application is just displaying that data using an API and having login and registrations and things like that, and then communicating with the device itself to unlock and to securely unlock in some fashion. You obviously don't want people analyzing your app and then going, oh, they just send this number followed by how long it should be unlocked for to the locking system, and it just magically unlocks, and that's very unsecure. So you definitely want a challenge response model, right, where you're generating a code on the device that has to be authenticated by a third party. In this way, it's not the app on its own, it's not the device on its own that actually get to authorize it. It has to be a third party which has code running that's out of the control of both parties, right? That's the reason why you have this triangle of security. If that makes any sense. Hopefully that does. But yeah, that's it really. I mean, it's not, I was gonna say it's not rocket science, I suppose it is. But the point here is that you need to break it down into these components. It seems like a lot to build, and it is a lot. It's a whole project, right? However, if you break it down into component pieces, do a bit of R&D, a bit of work on each thing, understand how you're going to tackle and bring these things together, diagram it up so you can understand how you're going to approach this, start breaking it down into the components that need to be worked on, you can go ahead and build it. That's how you build an app, right? That's how you build a project like this.
From scratch, yes. And here's a comment about Stripe. Yeah, Stripe seems to be pretty much the leader in building mobile apps.
It's interesting. Before Stripe existed, don't get me wrong, there are a couple of platforms like PayPal and stuff, but they all were using their own kind of system on top of any sort of banking infrastructure, and it was all a bit dodge to a certain degree. And the regulation didn't exist at that point in time, really. And it was the cryptocurrency of the time when that kind of stuff came out. Then, like, each bank would have their own specific API and system to deal with, which had some archaic ways of doing things. We talked about Unicode. You try to specify any Unicode characters, it just will not work. Right? Just no.
I had a recent client, my last Perl client, in fact, before I fired them and went full-time Flutter, that had 2 layers of different systems that they were using for bank-to-bank transfer of information. The lower layer had XML encoding, but it was encoding an XML layer at the upper level. So it was XML inside other XML.
This is like XML SOAP, isn't it? The SOAP.
It wasn't even SOAP. It wasn't SOAP. It was just XML payloads that had to look in the right shape. So I wasn't even at the SOAP level.
So was it XML RPC SOAP was a protocol system used by quite a few banks. Probably still is under the hood, to be fair. It's reliable.
that was one of the options, but that wasn't the option they were using. So it had
I,
to be raw XML encoded in other raw XML.
Yeah, it was like in a string, and then that string was then added as a an
Yeah.
argument to it. Yeah, I've seen this random crap like that,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's interesting because whenever you deal with like a someone else's third party code, right, their system or whatever else, you like look at their API or the way they do something, you're like, what possessed them to do it this way? And then like there's some like arcane reasons from like a historical perspective of how the company was trajectory when and how they changed things over time, but no one's been given them the latitude to actually go in there and change it, right? Because there's obviously a cost involved, but they're like, it's working, so why change it? But at some point you're like, it's no longer really working. No one can work with our system, right? So it's like I was talking to some people about that apps. I'm like, you build an app, but you're actually building a product. It never changes. It never stops changing. You're always changing. You're always improving. You're always, yeah. So,
Yeah.
I know. Sorry, I'm kind of digression there, but yeah.
Well, I derailed you on that one, but yeah, just banking in general, because it's been around for so long and had established sort of the need for computers. Like when I was first picking computers as a career, I said I'm going to end up either working for a bank or government, one of the two. That's really the only places that computers were used back when I was choosing it as a career. So it's kind of interesting that there's so many other things now. My watch uses computer stuff. It's all good. Anyway, one last question, then we can wrap it up here. And this one actually is kind of an interesting question because I see where they're aiming with this. So they want to take a string coming in and use that as a property name, and that you can't do without reflection, right?
No. Yes. No. No. Yes. I've done something similar to this without reflection.
Okay.
It's a bit dodge, though. It's a bit dodge.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. The custom key is dynamic, so using extensions don't work. Yeah, I mean extensions are just static functions into it, and they're only compile time, so you can't use those anyway. I'm kind of curious at what situation you're getting into trying to do this, right? So the way you actually get around this RTK in terms of most languages, including Dart, is you make closures. So you make a closure for each property, and you put them in an array that accesses each different field. So what you've now made is a lookup table. You've made a lookup table that goes from a string to a function, and that function returns the individual key. But you've got a finite set. You haven't got an infinite set. But to be honest, you probably want a finite set. Okay, so that's one interesting mechanism to do. There's another one called, there's a built-in function every class called no such method. This is very interesting. So you can call, if you call a method on a dynamic that doesn't exist, it will call the no such method function with an invocation object. The invocation object has the parameters and the functions and everything else. And you could, if you're in control of what you're calling, what context is in this situation, then there's no reason why you couldn't do something more custom. But I have a feeling, without knowing what context is and what you're in control of, the best way to do this is just have a lookup table. So you're basically making a map of string to function to a closure, right? So this is just a function that takes the object and calls the getter or the setter or whatever it might be, and then you've made yourself exactly what you're looking for, a way of taking a string and calling some code and performing some action. So yes, you can do that, but it's finite, right? You've got a specific set of lists that you're doing, right? Which I would recommend anyway. Like, I know you've got string here, but you really want to take that string and make it into an enum or something that's like, here's my specific set, right? Okay.
Last question. That's it. Let's wrap it up after 2.5 hours.
This is the correct answer to all that XML stuff. I like Jason. Yes.
I like
so I'm gonna say Jason YAML JSON have a reason to have them, but then you can't describe certain things in those languages easily without having lots of nesting, right? So that's where XML comes in. So there is a reason to have them, but it's when you try and just have one mechanism to do everything, and it's like at some point it doesn't make sense. A good example of this is how JSON's been appropriated into other things like BSON, which is the binary JSON system. You've also got JSON-L for that's where each line of input is a JSON object. Instead of having like a JSON array around the outside, it is essentially the JSON array, but it's this is just how we pronounce JSON. What was said earlier? There's some other weird pronunciation of it, but yeah.
JSON was
Jason. Yeah.
Difference. Yeah. Difference.
Just think Jason, the person's name, Jason.
Just don't say SQL around me. That just ires me really bad. It's SQL. It's no SQL. It's SQL.
SQLite.
PostgreSQL. PostgreSQL. SQLite. This is how these are the way that the creators of those pieces of software name it. So that's the way
here's the one. Is it GIF or GIF?
Oh, don't start me on that one. I see GIF. I see GIF.
So yeah, I think it's pronounced Leviosa. Bit of Harry Potter there for everyone, right? Well, thank you all for joining us.
Fun show,
and we'll be here same time, same place next week. We'll see what we can come up with, and we'll try and schedule it a bit earlier. In fact, I promise you're all going to get notifications straight after the stream because I'm going to set up next week's stream ahead of time.
Okay, good.
So apologies, but you'll all have a week to ahead of time to stick in your calendars.
Exactly.
And we'll see where we go.
I'll be back
again. We'll see you same time, same place next week. Bye for now. Bye.
Bye.